welcome everybody. I hope everyone is fully caffeinated, and we've talked a lot this morning obviously about Americans, so it's nice to have the real deal in front of me. Josh Sapan, President and CEO of AMC Networks, first time to the RTS, welcome. For those of you who don't know Josh, it's fair to say that he's truly one of the greats of the US TV and cable industries. He's led AMC for 2 decades, Josh? Yeah. 2 decades. And the transformation, as we saw on the tape, the transformation of AMC Network and the AMC channel from a classic movie channel to one of the premier drama channels with that slate is one of the great stories of creative transformation, probably in television history. You've also it keeps coming. The Walking Dead, for those who don't know, the biggest premiere on cable ever in the last few weeks, so the run is still going. And also we've got other channels in the network, IFC, Sundance, WeTV, and of course, we spent a little time putting a deal together on BBC America. You've bought Cello Media, so now the distribution and the channel footprint across the world gets bigger. 2014, while the industry's in turmoil, your revenues were up 1/3. And I can tell you one thing about Josh, he is not a cheese seller. He will never sell cheese. This man is, you know, the suits here, and we are absolutely suited, but there's one of us here, this man who's a published poet, a published photographer, and believe it or not, I know that a lot of American executives look like they've just got that briefing between the jet and Cambridge and just got enough. This man knows a hell of a lot about comedy, British comedy, and happens to be quite a fan of the British sense of humour. So, Josh, from all of us, welcome. Thanks for coming to the RTS.
You know, I just have to interject with a comment. This is not prepared. You know, Tim has never been this nice to me. I guess it took an audience to intermediate and cause. I've never heard that before. I'll never hear it again. I'm going to relish this moment. Let's just pause on that. The tape, the accolades, the history, the hyperbole. It's a great moment for me. Thank you very much. I'm going to go home now. I've had a tough flight. I'm a little sleep deprived. The 7:45 a.m. thing after the state dinner last night is a little bit rough. And actually, this is pretty goddamn good. So I'm going to leave on a high note. Timing is important in
Thanks,
show
Josh.
business.
That worked for me. Let's start with let's start with the obvious, and we're going to cover a little bit on. I want to spend a bit of time on creativity and what happened in AMC and the story, because it is fascinating, and then do a little bit about the market and the level of turmoil, opportunity, and I think this morning's conversation sets that up nicely as well. Just in terms of the story, I mean, you know, we've heard this year 400 scripted dramas, hyper competition. You're either the luckiest TV executive in the world or the best, yeah? Because the strike rate is, I mean, what we say the batting averages here, it's crazy. What happened in that first leap where the madmen break through, really? Tell me a little bit about it. Tell us what happened.
So, yeah, sure. So if you guys were here for the previous session, I just think it's simple. We were early into descent into turmoil. You know, everyone got onto it later. And so if you just choose a handsome guy who's a philanderer, and he won't stop, and a science teacher who deals crystal meth, and zombie killers, you end up with good TV. So I think that, I don't think we have any magic sauce at all. We were probably a little bit early to doing things, frankly, that the BBC had always done, no kidding. And that was to pay attention to and to revere quality of craft, quality of storytelling.
But you make it sound easy. Weiner had been working that script for 8 years. He'd been turned down by people. No one was interested. If you read the history books, it basically says the person who said, go and do it, was you. The quote I think I read was, I don't care about ratings, which is probably a great line if you want to get ratings. But you said, I don't care about ratings, just get me something special. Tell me, what made you do that?
Well, it really was a little bit zig if they're all zagging. No kidding.
Right.
So the American television landscape for the, until recently, because it's actually changed a bit now. And when I compliment the BBC, I do really mean that quite sincerely, because the BBC, I would say, does material for the wonder of the material much more than for here's the number and we've got a number that we're going to project. And so the American television landscape, in commercial television, particularly broadcast and cable, is a business of numbers for the most part. And if you look at the life expectancy of a show that goes on broadcast, its determined fate is often in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. How did it do? If it didn't do well, kill it. It occupying a time slot that's very precious and valuable. So we had, in part, the structural opportunity because of cable television and a dual revenue stream, and really what seemed like a rich invitation to not necessarily get the audience bang in the first 1 minute, in the first one episode, or in the first 2 episodes. And what those shows have a bit in common is that they build. They really do build. So Mad Men, Matt Weiner walked around with Mad Men famously in his briefcase for 7 years, and nobody would touch it. Because if you read it, it reads quiet. I brought it to 3 people who I trusted before we made it, and they all went, why, too quiet, Teflon people, nothing there, takes too long, no one will stay. Right. And that's a little bit true of Breaking Bad as well. It was rejected famously by multiple networks. So we really did pay attention to the material.
Pretty much everyone rejected. I mean, the big 4 at the time all rejected Breaking Bad, didn't they? They just,
the big 4 all rejected Breaking Bad. By the way, Walking Dead was passed on. We didn't.
Wow.
We were not the first to develop it. It was also passed on. So, so we went for things that were different. We went for things that might have been written by Hugo Blick, who's sitting in the front row, who made The Honorable Woman for you and us. It's really, I think, indicative of the type of material that we revere. By the way, a commercial for Hugo and for us on Sunday night at the Emmy Awards, it's up for no fewer than 4. But that's legitimate. That's meaningful. It's not just a boast to me. It's a boast to him. But it is a spectacular piece of television. Right. So.
And in terms of your role, because there's a lot of people here running companies, and that classic, and we heard a bit this morning, creative freedom versus, it's the alchemy of that fascinates me. And AMC as not the biggest player in the market, you're 2.2 billion turnover, something like that last year. I mean, you're not the biggest player, but your role in attracting the talent, becoming somewhere where they could do what they want to do, your role personally, tell me a little bit about that. What do you do day to day in terms of this talent development?
Not much.
That may be the key. That may be the key.
It's damn good work if you can get it. Suit up, stay clean, white shirt, knit tie.
We're just copying. I'm just in the shadows.
It's a damn good playbook. Don't misbehave. Don't insult. Compliment. Leave before your time is up. Is pretty much what I live by. If you don't speak the foreign language, don't try too hard. Don't tell prepared jokes. If you can't do it, I can't. Right. So that's been my recipe. So I don't really. The truth is.
Can you share that with a few American executives, by the way? It'd be quite useful when they're coming over. You get the Josh Sapan briefing.
That's exactly right. So it's not. I mean this. It's not false humility. Thanks for the flattery. You run a big organization with a lot of people. I put the credit to these shows clearly at the hands of and in the laps of the people I work with. Right. And if I had a contribution to all that, it is a hand in what you and Tony do, creating an organization where people feel good about what they do. They feel sort of really, truly enthusiastic. They feel, it sounds like pablum to say it, comfortable enough to take risks and sort of be, and feel noble even if it screws up a bit. And so that is, I think, and I'm proud of that, if I can make it personal, I'm proud of that contribution because I think we do have people who do feel that way and they really love what they do. So they're working way overtime in their heads, like they are at the BBC. I know all the group very well, and great stuff comes out of that.
Let's just change that, have a little look at the American market, because we touched it at the end of the Viacom discussion we had, but we didn't really get into it. But that moment in early August when Disney caught a cold, as it were, everyone took a big hit. You guys were a little bit more insulated with what's going on with, frankly, your programming. How fundamental is this now in
Yeah.
the US in terms of the broadcast? You can feel pressure. Here you can smell it. Is it serious?
Yeah. I have to get over the personal experience of having been on an earnings call when you report to analysts the day after the Disney comments.
Right.
We had very good report, and I was on the phone. I looked at our investor relations person. I finished the speech, 40 minutes of Q&A, and said, we hung up and said, Seth, how did we do? And he's a stone-faced guy without much affect, and he says, we're down 16%. So it's a personally mildly traumatic question for me to respond to. But I do think that my assessment is that it was probably a bit of an overreaction.
Right.
Specifically, that it, however, did reflect some of the things in the current system in the U.S. And I can list the long list if you guys haven't followed it. There's some maturity in the market in terms of total subscriber count.
Yeah.
There is a move to probably more consumption of streaming material away from linear consumption. That's not insubstantial. And people have the means to defeat advertising because they can bypass it if the material's recorded on their DVR. And it's possible that that wasn't adequately reflected in share prices. So I think that when the comments occurred, it crystallized a few things. This is my observation. But I do think it was a bit of an overreaction, and there's been a substantial recovery since, which I do think sort of suggests that it was a moment, and Disney, ESPN's a big company, and probably the biggest cable channel group in terms of total dollars that they process.
But looking a bit further forward, I mean, if you look at the story of corporate decline, it's often not that gradual decline. It's kind of, and then suddenly you realize the game's up, boom.
Yeah.
And you guys are hedging, as we all are, with OTT, direct to the consumer.
Yes.
I noticed you've launched a couple of services in that area.
Yes.
You're opening up different business models.
Yes.
Is this a hedge? Is it the future, the majority of where you'll be in the future? I mean, where do you see this going?
So we take all that stuff, as you might imagine, very seriously, and we think, I don't think that it's filled with drama, Tim. I think that there's a gradual evolution for technology patterns and consumption. Our view has been for now 8 or 10 years, and it is what gave a little bit of birth to our decision to invest so heavily in the shows you mentioned and complimented me about. And also, I'll mention one other thing, which is relative to a degree to the earlier conversation that occurred this morning, to our interest in owning content as opposed to leasing content, because that allows us to operate effectively as a studio.
So we'll see, if you take The Walking Dead, where you own.
We own the show.
Is that the model? Is there a real desire now to see that as the model?
Yes, we've had that desire for going on 5 to 10 years. We've executed against it in pieces because we'll be first driven by the creative. If there's a great show, we will license the show, we'll lease the show. If we would prefer to own the show if we can, because we can then export it and realize its value as Endemol Shine or anybody else, or BBC, and we also can set up channels around the globe. So we bought a company called Cello.
Where are you putting that decision in the creative process? Because that will be relevant to a lot of people, to me as well. When I look at ideas, I want the best creative idea. At what point did it kick in? So we've got two great ideas. Your judgment is one's just had the other, but it's made by another studio versus in-house. Where in the process is that decision-making happening now?
Priorities 1, 2, and 3 are creative. They really are. We'll own if we can find the material that is the best to own, but we won't go for a show. And frankly, what brought us to the BBC, which is the reservoir of what you do and the genetics of who you are, I'll just return the compliment, and what we know is going to happen in the future. And the shows, your lineup, I don't need to say it here because everyone knows, but they happen to be our personal favorites and the objects of our envy, and frankly, what inspired us. They're the shows we talk about. We talk about Luther, we talk about Broadchurch, we talk about Doctor Who, we talk about Top Gear, we did together The Honorable Woman. It put our Sundance channel on the map, along with Restless, Charlotte Rampling. So thanks for all the compliments, but I would say you guys are a little bit, for us, the godfathers of soul. You've been at that playbook for longer than we have and have shown that it is predominant, that it works. So that's what we're doing. What we're adding to it in business model is own it, as you have, set up channels around the globe, and that diversifies our business.
The question I was going to ask you before we just do a little bit on international and kind of consolidation and scale was the SVOD, I mean, Netflix being the clear example, but we know there's other beasts in the jungle. And that tension between distributing through others and what they demand versus your own brand, we're all having our crises on this in a nice way in terms of, certainly in my life, what do we deliver directly? I mean, you and I have talked about it versus what we give to others and that they build their brands with perfectly appropriately. Netflix, biggest customer for BBC Worldwide this year by a mile. Discuss.
Yeah. So I would say, it's sort of friend and foe in a certain sense, if I were trying to summarize SVOD writ large. We've had Netflix and Hulu deals for the past several years, and I don't think the final diagnosis is yet in. Our ratings, not to boast on Mad Men, Breaking Bad, and Walking Dead, to name those 3 shows, grew over a 5-year period, which is unlikely in television, if not unheard of. One could theorize that the availability of past seasons, which is how we licensed on, at the time Netflix helped sample and bring people to the new season on linear, and I think that that's true. I guess there's also an argument that says, gee, they could be the companion that eats you, and you no longer become necessary, and that's a macro issue. I would say at the moment, there's more sympathy in the system. I'm probably guided a bit by economic imperative as well, admittedly.
Indeed.
We get paid. But I'd say there's broadly more sympathy, but we should all keep our eyes
So when I watch The Walking Dead, because Amazon Prime, I can just get through 5 seasons. You know, AMC doesn't really get to me in that too much. Maybe a production credit. You just, it's a watching brief, is it, for all of us?
Very big time. It is different than anything's ever been in the past. And I'll offer one thought, but this is very inside baseball. But then again, I guess we are inside, as they say, baseball. It's possible that big shows, really big shows, are aided by an SVOD subsequent window, and shows that are marginal might not be as much aided, and they might be marginalized. And then the larger question, which you just brought up, which is the survival question, is do linear transmitters, cable or broadcast, to what degree should they be in that business and in what manner? We've experimented with a couple of streaming services. It interests us greatly.
And then let's just move finally to scale. And you're mid-size in terms of revenues, huge in terms of impact. Everyone is having to partner. The BBC selling 49% of its channel was not something we would have contemplated, frankly, 2 years ago.
Or that you would have desired. You had to suffer through us.
We had to find the right marriage partner, and then the acquisition of Cello. We've got, if you Google now your company name, you've got rumors of kind of potential consolidation with other partners. Overnight, we've got rumors around cable companies being acquired by French cable. There's just so much noise, but scale does seem to be material. And again, give me a sense of, are you going to have to buy things? Are you going to have to keep growing, or can you survive at the scale you are?
So I hope I don't bore you and everybody else with this answer. It does seem that in the US, scale on the distribution side, cable, satellite, as we call it, telco, seems to matter because it allows for advanced resource and engineering that makes for superior user interface, and really, you just have to have the resource to do that spectacularly. I think it's less critical by a long shot on the content side, because, and we're a bit of a test case, during a period in which there's been massive consolidation on the content side, we're a small to medium American player, and we've had a great run. And the why is because we've had good stuff. And the stuff has risen up without us being bigger.
Yeah.
It truly has. And so I do think there's a simultaneous, if I can use a fancy word, democratizing trend going on that's probably caused in part by the strength of social media. You can't dictate to people what to do, tell them where to go, or what to like. And you can't even use the time slot in the US at 9 after your big show at 8 to secure victory. You really have to have the show that people really, really want. So you see all these belly flops from big players because they don't have the right stuff. Not to damn them. So you better belly up and have the goddamn right stuff. And if you don't, no amount of clout, scale, strength, or weaponry will secure you because you better be the people's candidate. Right. So that's a simultaneous trend. It doesn't mean that, and that sounds sort of fundamentalist. There are, of course, the pragmatics of real business, but I do think that there is this truly democratizing trend caused by social media, and therefore you can be maybe even a small player, and you can strike magnificently and have everybody follow you.
Right. I mean, it's reassuring if you're the best, very scary if you're sheltering in the middle, and you haven't really had to deliver because you've had this secure distribution.
I think that that's true. I think there is a mushy middle bad spot to be in. But there may even be, depending...
We've been saying the witching hour's coming on that for a while. Are we now at that point where the clear out, based on your negotiations, our negotiations with the affiliates, the lovely cable and satellite companies we have healthy negotiation with, all of that, are we at that point now where everyone said the clear out of the middle, the weaker channels is not... Yeah. Where are we on that journey? Is it now?
No, I actually think we're in an evolution, not a revolution.
Right.
And it may sound dramatic and fancy.
I quite like the drama
to
of it all,
say it,
yeah.
But I think the truth is that the business environment, I would say, is evolutionary. Patterns are changing. They're changing by degree. People haven't thrown their big TV sets out the window.
Right.
They have tablets and whatnot, and they're watching television on tablets. But there really isn't a revolution. There's a pretty big evolution going on. It'd be nice to be at the right part of it. It'd be nice to be in front of it. But there's not fireworks.
Good. Shall we turn it over to the audience and see if anyone's got any questions for Josh? We've got a few minutes left. If we can have the lights up, then I can see. Who's got a question for Josh? Go for it. And if you can say who you are, that's great, thanks.
Sure. Hi. Hey Josh. Daniel Toole, I run media and entertainment sector for IBM in Europe. I actually had a question for Josh and a short one for Tim. So Josh, if in your words, evolution, not revolution, if it is as much in, I'll contend, insight as distribution, can you say something about how audience understanding in depth informs how you invest in content on the cost side? Or maybe on the top line, how it affects how you think about channels, sales, bundles, advertising. To what degree do you do that differently today to the past? And how does kind of informed creative and commercial decision-making help you run the business? And the short question to Tim, which I asked in this same forum a few years ago, is if you're your size trying to get big on the global stage, how do you do that with the fundraising constraints that you have as BBC Worldwide?
Sure. So I'll do my best to answer it from our point of view. We do now have a department that does business analytics, which is a term that was unfamiliar to me some time ago. And so they're organizing data in truly a different way. And it does provide an awful lot of insight. I would offer up, if I could bifurcate, where I think the data applies well versus not well. I think it applies extremely well on the promotion and marketing side. I think that there are advances in sort of how to spend money and how to make things happen and how to reach people to ask them to watch or watch again that are far different and are truly data informed. I think on the decision about what to make or not make, I think others have tried mightily to use data to say sort of good show, bad show, good story, bad story. And that's well beyond the traditional tricks of diagnosis of creative plot, character, and ASI dials. I have never seen it work terribly well.
I mean, reassuringly, it's been pretty much a disaster.
I'd say it's been a goddamn disaster. Yeah, I think you can't number your way to green lighting a show, and you can't get the data that tells you how to fix a story. I would rather ask Hugo Blick to take any script that we have and tell us what to do with it than I would look at any amount of data we have, no matter how big, how fat, or how seemingly definitive it is. It just doesn't seem to work. By the way, there's some quote I came across, maybe you guys will know it, and it said, numbers are not knowledge. You know, and I think that just particularly applies in the creative sphere. It just doesn't make you smart. It just gives you a whole bunch of numbers when it comes to creative judgment. But not so on the marketing, promotion, and distribution side. I think there it actually is powerful.
Great. I suggest we stay with Josh. I'm more than happy to talk about Worldwide's capital requirements. The only thing I would say, by the way, is what you hear across when Josh and I were talking is the money is normally, I'm going to be flippant, raising the funds is normally the easier bit than what we've just talked about, which is the ideas and finding the right partners. I've never really had big problem funding the ideas and the right partnerships when we find the right people to deal with. Lorraine. Oh, sorry, okay.
No,
Philippa, sorry. You. Lorraine or Philippa? Sort of.
Josh, I'm executive producer of Luther. We met at the Emmys last year. Hi. I've left the BBC, so kind of missed your arrival. Thank you for all those lovely comments about BBC scripted content. I'm quite interested to know how you're working now with the BBC community to sort of get those ideas through to America and onto your channels.
Sure. So we now, we're at least cousins of the BBC. We're married into the family at least, if not absolutely directly. And so we have, so we're with them, which is frankly a personal, I'll just say, delight for me to be around them. I shouldn't damn us versus the others I'm normally around. So that's a personal delight. And so we have BBC America, which of course we're doing many shows with. The nice part of what in part brought us to the BBC was our co-productions on the Sundance Channel. I'm sorry to keep mentioning poor Hugo's in the front row, but we did several co-productions with the BBC, not for BBC America, but our Sundance Channel in the US. I don't know if you're aware of that, including Honorable Woman, including Restless, and a number of others. And of course, you're aware that on American television, Stars did Missing. I think I have my names right. And Hulu licensed The Wrong Mans and had a terrific experience, and Broadchurch speaks for itself. So our other channels had BBC cooperation. We now have the opportunity to do more.
Correct.
And so we're going to look to do more and more. I think that.
Will you work with origination rather than acquisition?
Yes, very much so.
Part of the deal is for us to actually co-pro together originated projects, and we've got a volume number on that.
And frankly, that's the part that
we've just got to make that alchemy happen. Not easy. Yes. That's it. Sorry, Lorraine. We've just got. Well, I've been told very. Signals are getting rather lively in front here. Josh, we could go on forever, as we normally do.
Actually, I thought I just did go on forever.
No.
But, I can do it afterwards.
That was refreshing, brilliant. Thank you very much for making it over here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.